Shabbat Shalom. If you ask adults, if I asked you, your favorite Jewish holiday, how many of you would say Passover? Yeah, peep. Not the matzah part, but like the holiday part. Yeah, there's more hands for that. You know, because there's the Seder, you're with your family, you know, maybe you did it in your grandparents' house as a kid, and your parents, and finally it's your turn. It's a little nostalgic. People love Passover. Who loves Shabbat? Shabbat's a holiday. Oh, big hands. There you go. Because, you know, it's like Judaism saying you finally get a break. You work hard all week. You got your job. You got your kids. You got the schedule. You finally get a break. Shabbat is a very popular option. Anyone say hi holidays? Yeah, that's what I thought. It's okay. Now, if you ask kids the same question, what's your favorite Jewish holiday? What do you think they're going to say? Okay, obviously Hanukkah because presents. That's not really the Jewish part. There are other, I even had that in there. I knew people would say Hanukkah. The other favorite holiday of kids has, I think, definitely got to be, besides Hanukkah, Purim. Of course, because as far as kids are concerned, what's not to love about Purim? There's costumes. We're going to be inundated with so many Iron Mans and Paw Patrol and 1,000 princesses here on Sunday. And there's so many sweets. It's basically Chag HaCookies, the cookie holiday, because Hamatashin are delicious. They come in all flavors, and these days it's not just poppy and fruit. Oh, no. There's s'mores, there's Nutella, there's peanut butter cup. Gotta try them all. And then there's the story of Purim, right? There's an evil villain, there's a good queen, there's a noble hero. And it's close, but they save the day. Good triumphs over evil. Sounds like a classic kid's story, right? I think it's really good that kids celebrate Purim, but it is not a holiday for children. The themes of Purim are not themes that children can really understand, not on the visceral level that adults do. The story of Purim is a story of a weak man, very weak man. He's a king, his word is law. It carries consequences for hundreds and thousands and millions of people, I don't know, and his whole empire, that's many countries, but he is unable to think for himself. The Megillah makes a point in telling us the first dozen lines in the first chapter, before anyone else is mentioned in the Purim story, the first person mentioned is Ahasuerus, who throws a really big banquet, and, while quite drunk, demands that his wife display her body for all his male guests. She very reasonably refuses, and he very unreasonably is furious at her. So what does he do, this great leader of an empire? The king consulted with people he thought were smarter than him. We see this over and over with Ahasuerus, his inability to form opinions, to critically think for himself, and that means he falls prey to the personal agendas and vendettas of his closest advisors. One advisor says you should exile Vashti for her crime. That is a punishment that meant certain death in ancient times. And the king immediately, without thinking, without questioning, just does it. And of course, who can forget his most infamous advisor of them all, the evil Haman. Oh, y'all well trained. If you do that every time, this is going to take a while. Haman, just hold it to the end. This man has hatred of Jews in his blood. It clouds any logical thought in his brain. He only sees bad things in Jews. Eventually, he seeks to destroy all the Jews in the empire. He, however, is not stupid. He's just a man who knows his audience, and his audience is one guy, a king who refuses to think for himself and accepts the word of his advisors as law. And so, Haman needs only a few clever crafted bits of propaganda to sway this king. It doesn't even sound unreasonable as long as you don't think too hard about it. He says to him, Your Majesty, there's a certain people, Amechad Mefuzar, among all the peoples in your realm, whose laws and their ways, they're different. Ein shaveh hanicham. It's not in your interest to tolerate them, and asks permission to annihilate them. And just like that, Ahasuerus, a man whose position and power and privilege in his society insulates him from any blowback, any repercussions, decides, yeah, sure, the Jews are his problem too, and without a thought given to the matter, just tells Haman, La'asot bo katov beinecha. The people are yours to do with as you see fit. Purim is not a kid's holiday because as adults, we know what happens to a world where people stop thinking for themselves, who accept the pundits they see on TV or the actors and musicians they admire or the influencers and players on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, peddling their opinions as fact, their perspectives as irrefutable with no proof, half-truths and whole lies paraded as unquestionable as gravity. As adults, we know what happens to people, especially minorities like Jews, when the masses allow themselves to be just carried along like so much detritus in floodwater. Our blood is cheap to those in whose veins it does not run. Purim is not a holiday for children because young children do not quite understand the turmoil of the heroine, not like adults do. The heroine being a young, beautiful, very beautiful Jewish woman named Hadassah, who, when the king's men were hunting for women to be the king's next queen, found her and took her. And her adoptive father, Mordechai, advised her simply, lo tagid, don't reveal you're Jewish. And so changed her name from Hadassah, a very Jewish name, to Esther, a name that raised no non-Jewish eyebrows. And off she was taken to the royal harem, where she actually stood out, but for a good reason. Why? Lo biksha devar. She didn't ask for anything. She took up as little space as possible. And this made her especially precious. Noseit chen, she won the admiration of all who saw her. And for the king who always let himself be led around by others, well, he loved her most of all, and he made her his queen. She's a Jewish girl living among non-Jewish people, and what they love most about her is that she blends in beautifully. Her Jewishness is such a small part of her, you wouldn't even know it was there at all. And so when the terrible decree comes down from the king, Mordechai is, of course, beside himself, wears sackcloth and ashes like a mourner, and like one in mourning, wails and wails at the palace gate for his adoptive daughter. But when word gets back to Esther, how does she react? Does she think, how can I help this man who raised me? No. The queen was greatly agitated. Not Hadassah was, not Esther was. The Megillah makes a point in saying the queen was very annoyed. And tell us the first thing that she says to him, seeing him in such a state, isn't, are you okay? It's not, what's the matter? She says, take off your sackcloth, as in stop standing out. Stop flashing your Jewishness around. Don't you see how this makes you look, how it makes me look? And Mordechai pleads with her to talk to the king, but she balks. It endangers her livelihood to do this. It endangers her life. This king especially does not take well to women who dare to stand in front of him and look him in the eyes. She has every reason to be fearful of her position, especially as a Jew and as a Jew who has done such a good job of blending in. Purim is not a kid's holiday because kids are only just beginning to understand the things that make people hate one another for no good reason. Things like gender or race or religion, things that have no bearing on a person's morals or their character. Kids don't yet understand the full power, therefore, the allure of blending in. The small stuff, the name change to make ourselves a little more palatable to the native speakers and native born. How many of you, 2, 3, 4 generations ago, had a name change happen to your family? It happened either because they did it to us or we did it to ourselves, not out of shame, out of self-preservation, in a land surrounded by strangers coming from a place where we left because we were persecuted simply for being Jewish, Am echad mefuzar, a people just a little different. As adults, we see the dangers, the full dangers of a world that hates us for simply being born as we are. And whether they hate us on purpose or out of laziness, whether they are Haman or Hashverosh, it comes out to the same thing. And in those moments, when decisions must be made to be openly Jewish, whether at work or on a college campus or simply among friends, that decision, as for Esther, is actually a very hard one to make. To stand up and say in so many words, excuse me, sirs and madams, but I am a Jew. We cannot judge Esther's hesitation because who among us has not hesitated to raise their hand and their head above the fray, worried all the while we would lose it. True bravery and being who you are is deceptively challenging, and kids can't really understand that, not yet. Purim is not a holiday for children because it is only as adults have we been faced with moments where decisions need to be made that will define your life. And it's in those moments that greatness lies. Mordecai pleading to Esther to use her position and her privilege to intervene, to save the Jewish people. He tries everything. He tells her, don't imagine you'll be spared. You'll suffer the same fate as the rest of the Jews. Doesn't help. He tells her, well, maybe someone else will come along and save the day and you'll look foolish. Doesn't move her. Finally, sensing that he may be defeated in his goal in getting Esther to intervene on behalf of the entire Jewish people, he says to her, Umi yodea, and who knows? Im la'et kazeh higlagat lemachut, perhaps you have attained this royal position for just such a crisis. This is what decides her, and in that moment, Esther sets in motion the wheels that will save the Jewish people and destroy Haman. Now, some people think he's appealing to her sense of destiny, of fatedness, but I think this is a misread. What he's saying is, Esther, you live at a singular moment in time in a place where you are safe as a Jew, and that is unique in the history of our people. Look at all who came before you, all that has happened, and where you are today. Do not squander that enormous gift and opportunity, privilege you have to save your people. As adults, we know our history. We know the shoulders of the absolute giants that we stand on today and the relative safety of living in a country like America and how truly precarious that safety is. And how half of our brothers and sisters don't even have that, not living here as we do. And so it is incumbent upon us to remember now is this time of precariousness and uncertainty, of discomfort and hanging in this time. Look at all you have, living as you do, living where you do. Remember all those who came before you. Your ancestors did not die in or survive the Shoah, the Holocaust in Europe. They did not die in or survive the Farhud, the Holocaust in the Arab lands. They did not die in or survive the Inquisition, the genocide of Spain and Portugal. They did not die in or survive all of that for you to keep your head low today, to not speak up for Jews suffering around the world today, in this very moment, at this very hour. Right now, 2 little boys should be dancing in their Purim costumes. Right now, they should be stuffing themselves on hamantaschen of a dozen ridiculous flavors, and God willing, they're in a tunnel in Gaza with their mother. It is our privilege to be like Esther, to fight for our people, no matter how far away from us they live, no matter we don't feel their pain with the same acuteness, because their pain is our pain, and that's our privilege too. So I guess I was wrong when I said Purim is not a holiday for children. It's a holiday for children to learn from our ancient texts and traditions, to always think for themselves, to always be proud of being Jewish, and to always stand up for Jews everywhere. To learn from our texts the importance of these things. And Purim is an opportunity for them to learn from us, from the adults, how to live those values. I wish you a Chag Purim Sameach. Have a very joyful Purim and a Shabbat Shalom.